Why are so many people leaving the Sunshine State right now? In this video, we're going to get into it. Now, overall in Florida, we're still seeing a population gain. It has grown by about 5% over the past several years, and people are still moving here. Don't get me wrong. But I do see now more than ever that people are starting to change their mind about Florida. During the pandemic, we saw people moving to Florida in absolute droves. Now, I'm someone who helps people buy and sell houses in this area on a daily basis, so you may be wondering why I would want to make a video about why people are leaving. But it is always my goal and my purpose to educate you, and I don't want anybody moving here who can't handle it, who then has to sell and feels unhappy in Florida. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you why many people are choosing to uproot themselves and get out of Florida. Welcome back to my channel, everyone. My name is Krista and I've been helping people just like you move to the Central Florida area since 2009. Now, as you're watching this video, if you have any questions or you'd like to speak to me, my calendar is always underneath this video. There is a link to it. It's called Calendly. You can jump on there and set up an appointment just to talk to me through a Zoom call or a phone call, however you prefer, or you can go ahead and send me an email or send me a text. I'd love to hear from you. So without further ado, let's get into it. So reason number one why I see people leaving is simply the magic is worn off. You know, a lot of people moved here during the pandemic and they were like living in New Jersey and New York. That seemed to be the majority of my buyers that year were probably coming from New Jersey and New York, and they were thinking, why on earth am I living here, working from home, shoveling snow? I don't have an office to go to anymore. No one cares where I am. Why don't I move to Florida? So of course we had people moving here to simply enjoy better weather and no state income tax, right? But a few years have passed. Some of them are thinking like, gee, I left family behind. They said they'd come and visit. They're not coming and visiting as often as they said they would. The heat's kind of getting to me, whatever. It's daily life. It's not like being on a vacation anymore. And so I think for that reason, a lot of people have just decided to go back to wherever they had originally come from. Reason number two for why people are leaving, and one that I fully support, a lot of people have a ton of equity in their home, right? So it's time to maybe try something else and pull that equity out and see what you can obtain in maybe a less expensive state. And I have seen a lot of people moving to the Carolinas and a lot of people heading to Tennessee. If we're talking about pandemic, people who moved here during the pandemic, the average home price in Florida was $290,000. So that's across the entire state, about $290,000. Now it's at $415,000. So it is tempting for a lot of people to take that $125,000 in cash and use it elsewhere. Reason number three, skyrocketing insurance costs. So let's kind of talk about what happened in Florida. So we had Hurricane Ian come through here, right? And a lot of people, a lot of streets, a lot of communities just unexpectedly flooded. And there was a lot of damage, and a lot of insurance companies as a result left Florida. And this happens whenever we have a storm or a series of storms. This tends to happen. And so what you're faced with is less competition in the insurance market, fewer alternatives, and people's insurance costs go up, up, up. And even if your home wasn't damaged during Ian, you're faced with a huge increase in your policy. Even worse, I would say, is some people are finding that they can't get insurance at all. So there simply isn't a market for their home. Those are people that live in an older home, or maybe their roof is a bit older, and some insurance companies want you to have a certain age on your roof. Now that isn't entirely legal, but they'll find a way to kind of drop you if they feel that your roof is too old. This is causing a lot of pain for many homeowners. And right now, the average insurance policy for homeowners in Florida is $6,000. Now, a lot of that is kind of balanced out by the coastal homes. Their insurance policies have always been really high. But as you can see, if you started out with something that was $2,000 a few years ago, and now you're at $4,000 or $5,000, that can be a big strain. Our next reason for an exodus from Florida is our looming condo crisis. So I'm sure you saw that horrific tragedy in Miami when a 12-story condo building collapsed a few years ago, Surfside. Since then, the state of Florida has passed legislation that requires all condo buildings to maintain adequate reserves to repair their buildings. And up until then, condo associations, I guess, had more freedom to determine whether they wanted to maintain those reserves or not. That is not the case. And so what's happening is any condo building that is above 3 stories now has to have a structural integrity report done before the end of December of 2024. And as a result of this, some of these condo buildings are being faced with enormous assessments because they have to have repairs done. So each individual owner, may have a huge assessment that's now being added on to their monthly fee. Not everyone can afford it. Not everyone wants to pay it. And if you think about it, a lot of these buildings were keeping their condo fees low because they felt like it would increase the value of their condos, right? Because if you're looking at two separate condo buildings and one has, a condo fee of $1,000 a month and one has a condo fee of $300 a month, which one are you more likely to buy? So now some of those that were kind of delaying their repairs are forced to do them. And that is going to bring down the price of condos. They're going to become more difficult to sell. And a lot of owners are just not going to be able to pay those fees and they're going to be forced to sell. In addition, some of those condos, if the land is more valuable than what the repairs are going to cost, those whole buildings are going to come down and be redeveloped, which is going to force people to move out of their condos. Now, this really affects more than likely more South Florida, coastal areas than it does Central Florida. A lot of our condo buildings are little small, under 3 stories, but it does affect some and it will continue to affect us as this year progresses. I personally have never been a fan of condos. I don't sell very many condos. I don't think it's a great place to live if it's your full-time purchase. It's just too many people too close together. But it's a great property for landlords because you don't have a whole lot of maintenance to work on. So just keep that in mind if you are looking at a condo. I do think that prices are going to continue to go down in the condo market. Another reason why people are moving Florida is kind of the infrastructure. So I know from myself personally, I live in an area that has had a lot of new construction. And one thing that I've noticed is during heavy rainstorms, the rainwater just accumulates so much more than it used to. And I see flooding in the streets. Houses that didn't flood before are starting to flood. I'm talking about up to the car window point of flooding in the streets, in some streets. So I feel like just the massive amount of building that's taking place in Florida has affected a lot of areas, and people are upset about that. Of course, we have to talk about traffic. They say that going from Orlando to Orlando takes an hour, and oftentimes that is true. I-4 continues to be a mess, and with all the people moving here, that has only gotten a little bit worse. Now, we're not to the level of South Florida. South Florida traffic is a whole different level, but here in Central Florida, we are feeling the effects of the additional population growth. Of course, you have to take into consideration the time of day. Rush hour obviously is going to be busy, but it's also what day of the week. If you're going towards Disney, how long do you have to wait in line? You have to figure out how long you have to budget to get past the Disney traffic, which is always present on I-4 if you're there during hours of operation. And on the weekends, the traffic is headed towards the beach. You can get stuck if it's a particularly beautiful weekend, or if it's a 3-day weekend, plan on extra time to get yourself to the beach. And of course, one of the biggest reasons why people are leaving Florida is because of the affordability of housing. So I want to talk about that on 2 levels. First of all, property taxes. So if you moved here several years ago and you got a home for $250,000, and now that home is worth $400,000 or $500,000, your property taxes have gone up, and that has, made it difficult for a lot of people to maintain their lifestyle in Florida. Another thing is just the cost of houses. So right now, interest rates are fairly high, and the housing prices are up, which makes it difficult for people, even if you do want to sell and stay in Florida, to afford another home. It doesn't make sense. People who are even trying to downsize, they find that a smaller home is going to cost them more because of the interest rate increases. So those 2 reasons together are kind of encouraging people to leave the state in search of more affordable housing. Rents are also another issue. I primarily deal with the purchase of homes, but I hear from people that rents are crazy right now, and people are having to find roommates or rent a room or rent just a much smaller place than they want because they can't afford a whole house. In Florida, it used to be that we considered South Florida as the very expensive area, and now it's kind of almost everywhere. Maybe in parts of North Florida, it's still relatively affordable, but from Central Florida on down, the housing prices have definitely increased. And along with that, of course, the insurance costs, as mentioned, the taxes, it's all gone up. So in conclusion, yes, people are leaving Florida, but not everybody's leaving Florida. Many of us are staying here. Many of us are finding ways to make things work. And for buyers, a lot of sellers are starting to understand they have to provide some sort of a concession to make the interest rate more affordable, or to pay some closing costs, so that people are able to move around within Florida, or for people who are coming here. New construction has always known this. They give many, many concessions to buy down the interest rate and pay your closing costs. Now, if you are thinking about moving to Florida, or you are moving from Florida now, I would love to hear your thoughts. What is prompting you? And please feel free to comment below this video. Thanks for watching.